The election campaign is inching towards its end with only few days remaining till the American people give their verdict on who occupies the White House. Welcome to New Wave Global. You're watching Unraveled, and I'm your host, Marvi Sirmed. Our focus today is on the gender question around the presidential elections. Is the United States truly ready for a woman prime minister? And more importantly, a woman of color? Uh, Also, have American women readied themselves to break this most enduring of the glass ceilings? To help us unpack this layered and often contentious debate, I am honored to be joined by Dr. Christine Fair, an accomplished scholar and a leading voice in political science, known for her unflinching critique of extremism, geopolitical strategies, and gendered power dynamics. Dr. Fair, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Fair, as we examine this question, I'd like to open with, a uh, critical question. While polls show increasing public acceptance of the idea of a female president, women, especially women of color, still face harsh scrutiny and stereotypical biases. From your perspective, does America's readiness for such a leader, um, does it hinge more on changes in societal attitudes or on how these women present themselves to the electorate?
So I would say that America is a very racist country, but even more than racist, it is a misogynist country, right? Black men got the right to vote, at least in principle, 50 years before women did. So I think this question of is America ready for a female president? Unfortunately, my view is no. And you can see the hesitancy to vote for a woman. Let's start with Hillary Clinton, right?
Mhm,
Hillary Clinton was a white woman,
mm,
and yet this country, in fairness, she won the popular vote, but she didn't win the Electoral College. And I think we're going to see a similar situation with Kamala Harris, that it's possible, although I'm not entirely confident that she'll win the popular vote, but she's not going to win the Electoral College. The Electoral College is, of course, a vestige of slavery itself, and it's a way of removing the one person, one vote principle. So
mm,
certain states have a lot more weight than other states do, and these tend to be states that are much more conservative,
mm,
where there is less likelihood that they're going to support a female president. And I'll say that the resistance to having a female president, white or a woman of color, because from my point of view, Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris, they had different advantages and disadvantages. One,
mm,
Hillary had been in the public sphere for a really long time, and people came to hate her. I call this the bitchening. When she was a brand new face as the first lady of President Bill Clinton, she was actually quite liked. But as she spent more time in the public sphere, she became, and you could even see it in her face. You could see it in her demeanor. The way she interacted with the public changed because she
mm,
was increasingly seen with skepticism and, in fact, with considerable derision. Kamala
mm,
Harris has the disadvantage, of course, of being mixed race, right? She's part Tamilian, she's part Black. But
mm,
what she doesn't have is what Hillary Clinton had, which was this enduring decades-long presence where people had the opportunity to form deeply hostile, nonetheless misogynist attitudes towards her. I mean, there's an element of newness to her.
mm,
Um, that's countervalued by the fact, or countervailed by the fact, that she's a woman of color.
mm.
So I think the two candidates, just comparing them, they had costs and benefits, but at the end of the day, I'm going to be really surprised if Kamala Harris is our president. To be clear, I'm voting for her. And I might add, it's the opposition to Kamala isn't just because she's Black and because she's a woman. It's also principled opposition to her policies in Gaza and in Lebanon, and her refusal to support an arms embargo against Israel. So she's going to be losing a lot of Generation Z voters who just might not turn out to vote at all because, of course, Trump is going to be worse. So she's going to be losing a lot of support that has nothing to do with her being a woman. In fact, some women are particularly outraged that the face of American genocide is going to have the face of a Black woman.
Yeah. So that's a very important actually point. So US is uh, US is closer to accepting a female leader on her merits or not closer. I mean, what does this mean? That
So
you
the
know,
fact that, I mean, I think the fact that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote tells you that a slight majority of Americans are willing to countenance a female president. But when the popular vote is won, but the electoral college is lost, that
hmm,
tells you where very specific holdups are. And it's coming from these incredibly conservative red states. And I don't think people appreciate this. I mean, I myself am from a red state. I grew up in a rural area. I like to joke that I'm an Amriki Paindu. Um, when I was growing up, there was this expectation that women vote as their husbands told them. And if
hmm,
anyone's paying attention to social media, we are
hmm,
seeing a lot of male, social media influencers saying that if their wives don't vote as they tell them to, that it's going to be a problem. One social media influencer even explained that he has his wife vote on a mail-in ballot so that he can be sure that she's voting for Trump. So, what these female candidates do is they are like a lens that really focuses the kinds of misogyny that exist in this country.
hmm. That's right. Um, and also maybe is it because of this reason that we see that Kamala Harris has refrained from focusing on her gender. She has during the debate with Trump, more focus was on her ethnicity, on her race rather than her gender. She has repeatedly with the I think with the Dana Bash, her CNN interview, she said explicitly that she is running for the president because I mean, she qualifies for it. She has a right to as a
Correct.
citizen, not because she's a woman or a woman of color.
So I think she's right to not focus on that because like opposition to her gender comes from several places. Obviously, overwhelmingly white men are not supporting Kamala Harris. White
Mm,
men are not ready for a white president, much less a white female president, much less a female president of color. So
mm,
white men are not turning out for Kamala Harris. Overwhelmingly, they're turning out for Trump. And what this election is really becoming a referendum on is white male supremacy. White men have long felt that they have lost their privileged place in society and that they're going to have to stand in line just like everybody else. And what President Trump offers is is essentially a back to the future where white men had the primacy that they claim they no longer enjoy. Of course, it's preposterous for any white man to say that they no longer enjoy primacy. I mean, ask anyone who's not a white man, they'll tell you the primacy that white men enjoy. Um, White women are also a problem, right? White women, 40% of white women voted for Trump in 2016. And the reason why they voted for him is that, in my view, they wanted more access to white privilege. So they would happily be the handmaiden to the Trump administration if they
mm,
could preserve their second class status, right? So
mm,
white men and white women are problems. I would also say, based upon what I've seen, is that Black men are also a problem. Kamala Harris has been painted with, in certain circles, this brush of her prosecuting and incarcerating Black men. Now, to some extent, this critique is legitimate, but it's also not because she didn't arrest those men, right? She simply executed the law.
mm,
So when you've got opposition coming from Black men, and white women, it's going to be a really tough hurdle for her to cross.
mm. That's right. That's actually a very important point. And and we see that American electorate, as you've mentioned, it remains sharply divided, not just on ideological lines and gender lines, but on racial dynamics as well. And women, both white and of color, as you said, face more challenges from traditional patriarchal norms. So, does this mean this resistance is evolving into new, more insidious forms as we
Well,
speak?
I mean, look at what's happened as a consequence of Roe v. Wade being eviscerated by the Supreme Court. Look at how many women all over the country are dying because they cannot get life-saving health care
Mm.
because these laws put the sanctity of a zygote over that of a woman. The other thing I did want to say about Black males, I'm forgetting the woman's name, unfortunately, because I'd like to give her credit for this, but she
Mm.
had a really interesting tweet about Black men and white women in their voting preferences. And her tweet was, white women want more access to white supremacy, and Black men want more access to male supremacy. And this sort of, in a soundbite, capitulate or sort of summarizes why we see support for Black men and white women for someone as horrible um, in every possible measure as Trump.
Yeah. And we see this phenomenon, Dr. Fair, in other countries as well, especially from where I come from. You know,
Right?
in
But
India,
at least you had a female prime minister. At least
that's
India
why,
had one.
yeah,
Bangladesh had one forever.
yeah,
Had two prime ministers who were female forever. Sri Lanka has had two female prime
yeah.
ministers.
That was my next question, actually.
Yeah.
Historically, women in power, I mean, that strike that, we'll come to that later. But as you mentioned, the international figures, there's international examples of female leadership. Jacinda Ardern, Angela Merkel, uh, and before them from South Asia, Indira Gandhi, Benazir Bhutto, Bandra Naik, Hasina Wajid, Khalida Zia, and now the new generation has come up both in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and in different countries in South Asia. Are they, is this, they're far more conservative societies. Does this phenomenon of women coming up in the national politics, in the national leadership, does that inform our understanding of America's readiness, or are these comparisons relevant, or is the American context too complex and too unique for such analogies?
So I'm a South Asianist, so I'm not a Europeanist. So I can't comment upon the sort of political antecedents of Angela Merkel or even Thatcher for that matter, or
Mm.
even Golden Meir. I can't speak to what foisted them into power. But what is clear looking at the female leaders in South Asia is that they are all dynasts, right?
Yeah.
They all came into power either because their fathers were brutally killed or because their husbands were.
Mm.
They did not come into politics um, sui generis.
Mm.
And so one can do a thought experiment. Would we have had any of those leaders had they had their husbands or their fathers not been leaders themselves, or not, or had they not been killed brutally, right? Indira Gandhi, of course, is, I mean, her Nehru just died, but but for the most part, generally speaking, with the exception of Gandhi, I think without exception, those female leaders were foisted to politics on the backs of a tragedy. And they have been the matriarch of dynastic political parties. Um, Same thing is true of Sonia Gandhi, of course. So even though she's not the PM, she wields a lot of party influence within the Congress Party. So I'm not sure that they really are relevant. But what I will say is that the United States, people don't really appreciate how in the states where the Electoral College matters so much, how deeply conservative and misogynist America is. Like I grew up, my stepfather explicitly and repeatedly would say that he wasn't going to save money to send me to college because I would just go there and get a husband, right? So, I grew up in a very anti-girl society.
Mm.
And when I go back, some things just don't change. So I don't
Mm.
think people, it's easy to look at women in bikinis and, you know, whatever is this fake patina of liberalism. Because if you actually go to the conservative parts of America, you actually see a very different kind of America.
Mm.
And the evangelicals, which still has a significant sway over Americans, is incredibly misogynist. You know, the church that I went to impugned women for working outside of the house, for taking jobs away from men, this expectation that women vote as they're told to vote. And you see a lot of uh, this misogyny being expressly articulated by the Trump campaign. And so people don't like him in spite of his misogyny. They like him because of his misogyny.
Yeah, and it's something that you said before, that white women supporting Trump might be consolidating their share of the pie, um, because otherwise they won't have that. Can we
Correct.
compare that to the situation in Pakistan and India, where we see a lot of urban, upper middle class, and elite women supporting Trump and Imran Khan, the other versions of Trump?
So
So Modi and Imran
you said it, not me. You know, I haven't been able to go to Pakistan since 2013, so I haven't really been able to put my feet on the ground and get a sense of it. But he's an incredibly conservative, unpleasant individual. And yet these incredibly cosmopolitan women have
Khan.
put their faith in him. So
Mhm.
I see a lot of parallels. I also see a lot of parallels to cosmopolitan women supporting Modi,
Mm.
right?
Yes.
I mean, the BJP is a very misogynist party.
Yeah.
And yet there doesn't seem to be a gender divide in who supports him.
Yeah. But here in the USA, I have been interviewing uh, some Pakistani Americans and Indian Americans. I see a lot of pro Modi and pro Imran Khan people supporting Trump. Uh,
Yep.
Among the Indian Americans,
Oh,
trend
absolutely.
has trend has been that traditionally they have been supporting Democrats, but now the support for Republicans and for Trump is growing, but women are, I think, defying this new trend. There are very little number of women that are supporting Trump from Indian Americans.
So I don't know because I haven't seen the data. I know that Milan Vaishnav just released a report, I believe yesterday, and I haven't looked at it yet. I mean, here's the issue. I've met a lot of very wealthy South Asians. Once you become wealthy, you care
Yeah,
about protecting your wealth and your ability to generate more wealth. So
absolutely.
I suspect that some of the people that you're interviewing, they're not recently immigrated. They're not struggling to pay their bills.
Yeah,
In fact, they behave just like rich people everywhere, which is supporting this. The irony, I mean, it's not irony, but there's a lot of immigrants that support Trump. And there's this let me in, but close the door behind me. And they
uh,
have a very anti-immigrant narrative. Well, I came here legally, and all these other people are jumping in front of the queue. I had to stand in line. I want mine. And so there,
that's a
you know,
common argument. Absolutely correct. Yeah.
right? It's very common.
Mm. Yeah, and in fact, I have in my last few weeks, I've interviewed several immigrants, and they offer the same argument. And
Yeah.
there's the terrible speech of Donald Trump in which he spoke offensively about Hispanics. And
Hmm.
even then you see Hispanics on block voting for, at least expressing their opinion that they'll vote for Trump.
So, I mean, the reason also there is that most Latinos are deeply religious.
Hmm.
They're either Church of the Four Square, which is an evangelical church, or they're Catholic. And so they are viciously pro-fetus. And
Mhm.
so what appeals to them about the Republican Party is the appeal to religious values. And so everyone sort of expects that Latinos are going to be rejected by the anti-immigrant rhetoric. But the fact is, if you're a legal immigrant here and you're voting, you've got other issues other issues that motivate you. And they seem to be very much motivated by this abortion issue.
Yeah. And I think a couple of days ago, when probably yesterday, the 24/7 news cycle messes with your head. You don't, uh,
No, right. It's hard to keep track.
yeah. Uh, but very recently, Trump said that he was our protector, even if we like.
Oh, even if we don't want it, he's our protector.
Yeah, yeah.
Says a convicted rapist who
Damn.
has credible allegations of child molestation, a man who sexualizes his own daughter, a man who has taken away our right to choose. Yeah, he can go himself.
Yeah, but see, even women still after this is third wave or fourth wave, whatever feminism in
Yeah.
vogue right now. But even women, we see that they are not breaking free from that good old different the feminism based on the differences between women and men, putting women's motherhood at the center of the debate, as if we have to be in politics or in leadership because motherhood is our the center of our existence, and because of that we are different, and we can bring so much good to politics and to the country. And
Well,
that,
I mean, you see this in the JD Vance argumentation that women who don't have children we're nothing,
yeah, that's
right?
right.
And the only rule for women like me who's postmenopausal is taking care of children.
And the
Children
childless cat women.
and I'm a childless dog woman. So and you've seen the criticisms of Kamala Harris that she has no biological children of her own. So this issue of the Republican Party is just obsessed with our uteruses. We have Republicans in the womb, and there's just no other way around it. They're not pro-life. Their laws do not protect life. The children die with these women. They're all about controlling women. And if they take away our right to choose, they take away our right to control our economic choices. And it's the economic choices of women that allow us to stand up to abusive men, that allow us to have a say in the household. Like when my husband gives me crap about my job, I point out that I out earn him and I'm going to continue doing what I need to do. Right. So
Yeah.
that sort of stuff has really gotten into the craw of men in this country. There's been I'll call it a backlash to the achievements that we've made. And by taking away our right to choose, they're going to be etching, basically eking out ways of eroding our economic progress.
Yeah. And these are the same people, the conservative, I would say, conservatives. They argue that women in power must conform to the traditional perceptions of femininity to be accepted by the male-dominated political structures. Do you think Kamala Harris, her navigation of this paradox, redefining what political femininity means, does it reinforce old stereotypes, or should we at all speaking about political femininity?
So I think a lot of women that are in politics have successfully whether it's Republican or Democrat, have
Mhm.
successfully negotiated having having children or not. So I I haven't really thought about political femininity. Um, I haven't, I mean, because in part I don't give a crap if Kamala Harris has children or not. Um, so I don't have a lot of distance on this issue because I'm also a childless woman who has chosen motherhood over motherhood. And so, but I look at female politicians, most of them do have children,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, but 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 do they should women flaunt this femininity in order to be acceptable in politics? Or
I mean,
we
I
can,
wish it were, frankly, I'm not a political strategist, so I don't know what works or not works. I know that the political ads with the candidate with their family, people love to see families, right? So, and whether you're a male or a female, so one Vindman's, I'm blanking out his name, um, Vindman's competition
Mhm.
didn't have his own family. So he basically commandeered a fake family for his political ads. So it's not just women that feel the need to have a family.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
it's, I think all politicians, because there's this expectation that people trust a family person
Mm,
more than they trust, a bachelor for sure, or
mm.
someone who doesn't have children. I think implicitly society judges people that are not part of a family,
Yeah, that's right. And it's just
male or female.
male or female. It's just the South Asian societies in which a man divorced twice, married third time, can become the prime minister, but this luxury is not available to women. A divorce.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably true. I'm also not sure if it's true of an American woman. I mean, Hillary Clinton was screwed in two ways. One, I had problems with Hillary Clinton because she didn't stand up to Bill and kick him out,
Yeah.
right? She was, and she basically made an agreement for power that I'm going to stay with this man because I want to be president one day, right? And there was a lot of antipathy towards her for that, including me. But
Mm,
had she divorced Bill, she would have been a political non-entity. So she was penalized whether you do or whether you don't.
mm, that's right. So, in nutshell, do you think American women are ready to be in the White House, or do they need to do more?
We've
What?
been ready to be in the White House. There's no question that women are ready to be in the White House. We should have already had female secretaries of defense, right? I mean, this country is so, I don't think people appreciate just how deeply misogynist this country is, right?
Mm,
Um, so we should have had a female secretary of defense. We should have already had a female president. But I'm afraid that we're probably not going to know the night of election day who the president is, just like in we didn't know in 2020 who the president was. But I think at the end of the day, when everything is counted, I
mm.
don't think it's going to be Kamala Harris that's the president.
So, women are ready, but is America ready to have a woman
No.
in White House?
Obviously, enough, like I said, going back to the popular vote, Hillary Clinton got the popular vote, but she didn't have the Electoral College. So in those states that are deep red and conservative, they don't want us. And the Electoral College over empowers them to make sure that we stay out of the White House.
I do believe what you are saying is true, but my heart says, let us win. Let us win this
I
time.
hope, I really hope
Yes,
it's high time. It's high time.
it's high time.
But I'm a
And
skeptic.
and we really hope that after the November 5, we get together once again and we
Yeah,
smiling and we
if
are
if if
celebrating.
if Kamala wins, there will definitely be a big soiree, a big party varty at my house. Um,
Absolutely.
and if there isn't, you're going to have to come knock on my door because I'm going to be barricading myself in and just insulating myself against humanity because I'm going to be so angry at white women, black men, and white men who
Mm,
just couldn't vote for a black woman.
absolutely. I am with you on that. So thank you very much. We'll have to leave it
Thank
here.
you.
So thank you so much. And it was a very good discussion, and we'll continue after November 5 if we are happy.
Or even if we're not happy, it's
Even if
gonna
we are not happy,
it,
we'll have different conversation then.
we'll have a different conversation. It'll take a lot of bottles and court to get through 4 years of Trump.
Absolutely. Oh God.
Yeah. All
Dreadful.
right.
Anyway,
Thank you.
thank you. Have a good
Have a great
one.
day. All right. All right.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.